Hi sculptors, I'm Liz Morris of Peppermint Rose Productions, and today I'm going to show you how to make a pair of scented confetti cake slice earrings, a cake slice charm, and an adorable cake on a plate charm. I put a full list of tools and supplies you'll need in the video description, so please be sure to check that out. Let's dive in and get started. So the first thing we need to do is make the sponge cake. I'm using a little craft organizer case to keep my supplies all in one spot as I work. In order to get a moist looking vanilla sponge cake, we're going to mix white, yellow, and translucent clays. I'm using Sculpey Premo polymer clay, which I highly recommend, or Fimo clay, which you can get at most local craft stores. I'm going to cut my translucent clay in half and save the other half for later use. Now we'll condition the clay and blend the colors together. This is probably the most time-consuming part, but it is necessary to get the clay to be soft enough to sculpt. If it's not conditioned, it'll be crumbly and we don't want that. To condition the clay, just roll it around in your hands, making a ball or cylinder, then twisting and folding. I like to start with this method, then I'll use an acrylic roller or my pasta roller if I want thinner, even sheets. Like I said, it will take some time and the colors will look marbled, but eventually they will blend together to make one nice pale yellow color, which is what we want for our sponge. Just keep twisting, folding, and rolling. Now that the clay is the right color, I'm going to flatten it out and inspect it for dust. Polymer clay attracts dust and there are a couple ways to keep it clean. One of the easiest ways I've found is just to scrape my craft knife over the clay. It will build up on your knife without damaging the clay too much. You probably will still need to smooth it a little with your fingers. I got this acrylic roller at Michael's in the baking section. It has removable rings that will give you varying thicknesses. For our cake layers, I'm using the purple ring, which will make the cake layers about 1/8 of an inch thick or 3 millimeters. Time to cut out our cake layers. We're making a 3-layer cake, so we'll cut out 3 circles. I'm using a cookie cutter I found on Etsy with a diameter of 1 1/4 inch or 31.75 millimeters. You can also use any miniature cookie cutter around the same size. Remove the excess and set it aside. Take your flat blade and carefully slide it under each circle and set them to the side. Now we're going to brown our cakes. We'll mix a light brown clay and the other half of the translucent clay together and place it over the sponges. This will mimic the browning that naturally happens during baking. Once the two colors were fully blended into one, I ran the sheet through my pasta maker at number 9, which is 1 notch below the thinnest setting. We want this sheet to be super thin. I'm going to gently pat down the tops and sides to eliminate air bubbles. I didn't get all of them, but I'll go back and poke them out with my craft knife, then smooth them out. Next, you'll want to cut them out and remove the brown excess clay and set them aside. Now we'll make the pink fondant layers that go between our sponge layers. Roll out the pink clay at 1/16 of an inch or 1.5 millimeters. I'm using the thinnest blue layer on my acrylic roller. Then cut out 2 circles. Alright, it's finally time to stack the cake. Start with one of your sponge layers and that will be the bottom layer. Then layer on a pink fondant circle and continue alternating. You should end up with a brown sponge layer on top. Pat, smooth, and adjust the top and sides as you like. You can also gently roll the whole cake on its side to keep everything aligned. Now let's take the excess pink clay and roll it out again at 1/16 of an inch. This is going to be our outer fondant layer that will cover our whole cake, so make sure it's rolled out with enough extra space. Carefully center it over the cake and smooth it out, starting from the top, then smoothing down the sides, just like you would do with a fondant cake. Or so I'm told. Once that's smoothed out, trim the excess away with your craft knife, cutting as close to the edge as possible. Keep cleaning it up till you're happy with it. Tuck in the bottom edge using your fingers, or my favorite, a flat chisel silicone tool. Slide your flat blade under the cake, lift it off, and continue adjusting the bottom. The bottom edge can tend to spread out a little, so place the cake on its side and scrape off the excess with your craft knife as you roll it on the cutting board. Keep smoothing and rolling the sides until they're about even. Remember, it does not have to be perfect. Okay, with the blunt side of your flat blade, we're going to mark out guides. I like to start with the center horizontal line, then do vertical, then 2 middle cuts, so you should have 8 slices marked. Now flip your blade so the sharp edge is down and hold the ends of your blade as firmly as you can as you push straight down. This is probably one of my favorite parts. I love seeing the inside of the cake revealed. Go ahead and separate them out. Now your cakes are ready to texture. You can use a needle or craft knife to texture. Personally, I like the craft knife. I think it adds a little extra realistic fluffiness to the sponge, which I really like. What you want to do is make really tiny, random circular motions on the surface of your sponge layers. Don't poke too deep, just try to keep a light touch if you can. It's literally like scratching the surface. I tend to make counterclockwise circles or figure eights, but you can make any path you like. As long as it's tiny and circular, that's what's going to give you that realistic sponge look. I also texture the slivers of brown since they're technically part of the sponge. It adds more realism. You don't have to, but sometimes I will go over the sponge twice. It seems to add a little bit more detail and fluffy texture. Now let's add some sprinkles to our sponge cakes. I've chopped up some large polymer clay sprinkles that I bought online, and using my needle tool, I'm just going to dip it into some Sculpey oven baked clay adhesive, or Bacon Bond, as it used to be called, and then into the sprinkles. From there, we'll just spread them on and poke them into the sponge. To make our charm, we need to attach the charm hardware. I used jewelry pliers to attach an eye stem to a lobster clasp. I connected them with a small jump ring. Now I'll just dip my handy needle tool in some more Bacon Bond and put it on the eye stem. With my cake slice pointing away from me, I carefully poke the eye stem into the back of the top edge of the cake at about a 45-degree angle. Now we're going to add the whip topping. Same thing, add Bacon Bond, then place your topper. I made these in a mold and pre-bake them, but I'll show you how to make them in just a second. It's super easy. To finish up our charm, just spread Bacon Bond about halfway up the back, then add sprinkles. And there you have it. Your first charm is ready to bake. Now let's take a look at how we made that whip topping. To make the topper, roll a small piece of pink clay into a ball, then push it into a whipped topping silicone mold. I got this mold off Etsy, and it's got a great variety of sizes and it's clear, so it's easy to match up the right size for your cake slice. If you don't have a mold, just make a small teardrop shape, flatten the bottom, then use your needle tool to carve the swirl lines. Now just take your flat blade and slice off the top. Spread the clay to fill out the edges. The next part can be a little tricky, but carefully try and pop out the topper from the mold, then place it on the top of your cake. Making your earrings is very similar to the charms. The only difference is you're connecting an earring hook to your eye stem instead of a lobster clasp. Just like before, spread the clay adhesive onto the eye stem. Make sure the hook is facing toward you. Then poke the hardware into the back of the cake slice at a 45-degree angle. Repeat this with your second earring. Add clay adhesive to the back of the cake and place your sprinkles on. And voila! I think the cake on a plate is my favorite charm. It just has so much, well, charm. We're only going to texture one side, since the other side will be glued to the plate. Texture the layers as much as you like, then add your sprinkles. Next, we'll cut out a bite from the cake. I'm using a pottery modeling tool I got online called a clay hole cutter or beveler. It's basically a metal tube with an angled hole. Cut out the bite anywhere you like. I did mine in the middle. Put your removed clay to the side. Now just add some glue to the plate and place your cake on. Take the small bit of clay and texture it. Add more clay adhesive to the end of the fork and on the bottom. As best you can, stick the textured bit of cake onto the end of the fork. Put a little glue on the plate and place your fork on top. Keep adjusting and texturing as you see fit. Remember, it won't fully stick to the plate until it's baked. Now we'll add our clay glue and sprinkles about halfway up the cake. There was a little dust on the top of my cake, so I'm taking a pointy Q-tip and dipping it in alcohol, and that removed the dust. Now for the topper. You know the drill by now. This stem was a little difficult going in, and then, wait for it, yep, that happened. Don't let this happen to you, kids. I didn't even realize I was squishing it. Definitely try to hold the plate by the edges while you're doing this. So I fixed the part I squished. Now, as a final touch, I'm just adding a little texture to the bottom of the cake sponge with a toothbrush. And there we have it. Isn't it cute? Our cake on a plate charm is done, and all our cakes are now ready to bake. Cover your cakes with an aluminum foil tent or a deep aluminum baking sheet turned upside down, as I've done here. Scenting your cake is like putting the cherry on top. It just gives your piece a little extra unexpected delight. For our cakes, I'm using P&J Birthday Cake Premium Fragrance Oil. I got this on Amazon. You can put the oil in the clay when you're rolling and mixing out your colors, but since polymer clay is already oil-based, if you add too much oil, it can make the clay really sticky and, frankly, unpleasant to work with. And since these cakes are so small, I just prefer to add the oil after they've baked and cooled down. Polymer clay is porous, so it will just absorb the oil and retain the scent. How long the scent lasts can be tricky. It depends on the brand of oil or how much used. Sometimes the fragrance can last a few days, weeks, or on up to several months before having to add more oil to refresh the scent. This last step is optional, but I like to add a little UV resin to my charms to give it some extra durability. I'm using a hard type UV resin. Here I'm using a dotting tool to add the resin with precision. You can also use a needle or flat silicone tool. I also add the resin to the outside pink fondant layer. I don't do the sponge. Now we'll cure the UV resin with a nail UV LED light according to the package directions. And here's the final piece. The resin gives it a shiny, glossy look with an added layer of durability. We're finally done! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did making it. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe. More Delicious Sculpts videos are in the works. Till next time, happy sculpting!